now. Let's come back over here. Now, one thing that I find when I do artwork is I create lots and lots of images, and I can either keep overwriting them, call them all like scroll 1, scroll 2, scroll 3, and this is just going to fill up this project directory or project folder very, very quickly. So wouldn't it be better if I go over here and go new folder, and I'll call it image, right? And now we have a subfolder in here inside our project. So let's just delete. I'm just deleting that image that I just created, and instead of saying let's save it directly here, let's save it to here image. Just to give you a quick sense of that, we'll go Control Enter. So here image is now cloud/project/image. So that here is a quite flexible tool. It doesn't just say where the project is, it can also be used to specify subdirectories or subfolders. So that's what I'm going to do from now on. So let's save that, let's run it, and if I look inside the image folder, I've got something called scroll. Okay, and just check, yep, that's the same thing. Great. So you go away. Now what would be nice, so we're very, very close to actually being finished. So all we have to do to make it really nice is to have a kind of better way of constructing the file name. One thing that I find a bit irritating about this is that every image, if I go up here and tweak my parameters, and then it gets written to a thing that'll just be called scroll, and it might be called scroll 1, scroll 2, and I think, well, what are the parameters for that? It would be nice if the file name actually told me something about that. And there are many, many ways you can do this, but I would like it to be the case that every unique parameter setting corresponds to a unique file name. So one way we can do this, all right, I'm going to go, so if I go back over here, if I just go art par for a second, we have this list, right? It's got seed, end path, end steps, and so on. I can try to do something like, what I really want to do is combine them in some sense of the term into one thing. Okay, so I could do C, well, let's just see if this does anything for the moment. Art par, because we talked about C as a way of creating a vector. That doesn't do anything useful whatsoever. That's obviously not quite the thing that I want to do. What if instead what I'm trying to say is convert each one of these things to a string. So everything that's inside one of these things, convert it to a character. So we want to save it to text. So inside the one of the packages that tidyverse provides is a function called strc. So that combines things together as strings. If I go strc art par, let's have a look at this. Ooh, okay, we're getting somewhere. It's taken our list and turned it into a little vector of numbers. Well, sorry, they are numbers, but you'll notice they're in quotes, so it's being treated as text. Okay, but now that's a vector, right? If I went if I just gave that a name and called it X, and I'll just go back up here, clear the screen, have a look at X again, and go X1 is 2, X3 is 80. This thing is behaving like a vector, like the sort of thing that I created with see, what I'd really like to do at the same time as I create this is, I don't need to create a variable now, is have it collapse. In addition to converting it to a string, let's have it collapse. So we'll just crush all of these numbers together into one big long string. What I will do though, to make my life a little easier, if I go collapse equals, and I'll just put a hyphen in there. And what that's going to do is give me this. Here we have a unique identifier now, 2, 580, 270, and that maps onto art par. Okay, so what I've got now is a tool. So let's just copy and paste that up into my code. Right? And let's, instead of calling it scroll, let's go this. So we've got stiracy to so we're going to concatenate that into the as a string. So we take the art part, the parameter list, and then concatenate them or combine them as a string and collapse it together. So that is how we're going to create our file name. Except, problem with that is that our file name is just a string of numbers. And what we actually need it to be is we'd also like it to have something like scroll and .png in there. Okay. This feels like a job for a pipe, right? So if I reorganize my code slightly and go argh, and so we take the parameter list, and then I go pipe it to stiracy, and as the pipe, as we're familiar with, we know what this is. We say we take the art parameter list, and then we pass it to stiracy, like the stir combine, and then we collapse it, and that gives us the output that we want, like this. This is boring. I'm going to run the exact same thing again and just illustrate that by moving Control L to clear my screen, and now if I go file name, it's still the same thing. So to make it really explicit, what's happened here is I took the first argument from the stiracy command and put it on the left hand side of the pipe. So the pipe is essentially doing whatever is over here on the left hand side gets chucked in as the first argument over here on the right hand side. So it's essentially what the pipe does is pick this up and chuck it in there. Okay, so great. You're probably at this point going, so you told us that before, why are you telling it again? Because let's just pipe again. And okay, this time I'm going to go stiracy, and I want to go, what I want to be able to do is take this file name and put scroll .png on it. So I could do, let's just start with that, shall we? We'll go scroll .png, and so what we're going to do is we're going to take all of this and we're going to combine it with that, and this time we will have the collapse being nothing. I promise you this is going somewhere. In an extremely boring way, but it is. Okay. Alright, file name. Let's have a look at what we've got. So what we have now is this file name. Okay, so it's been called that, and then it's got scroll.png chucked on the end. The problem is that by default, right, the pipe is making the input. So everything that was over here, that's this bit here, becomes the first argument to the first thing into the next chain, next step in the chain. What I actually want to do is I kind of want it to be the second or the third thing. So here's how I do that. The pipe is actually a bit cleverer than you would think from my earlier lectures. Let's suppose I do this instead. So we'll have scroll, and then I'm just going to put, for now, just put a dot there. And then now let's run it. So I'll save it, run it again, and What am I doing wrong? Do, 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 do. Oh, oh, right. Sorry, there is a bug in the code as a whole doesn't work. This part by itself will work, so let's just run that section. Okay, and let's clear the screen again, and let's have a look at what the output of that was. File name. Okay, so now what it's done is it's put scroll on the left, and then so it did scroll first, then it grabbed it. So the dot is basically an insertion point. What it's saying is that the stuff on the left is going to be chucked into, being the technical term, the command on the right hand side of the pipe at locations specified by dot. So if I wanted to be completely precise, I would be saying this. When we did our first step in the pipe chain, we went from argh pipe to stir-c, and then we're just going to take this and chuck it there. We take the argh and replace the dot with argh, and by default the dot goes in the first location, but you can choose to put the dot wherever you like. So I'm just going to put it in the yeah, I've forgotten how commas work now. Okay, so you have a space after the comma, right? Sorry, that's my browser being clever again. Okay, so there's that. Okay, so if we put it like that, and scroll, I'm going to put an underscore there, and then I'm going to put the .png there. Now we have unexpected token. Are you sure about that? Yeah, I didn't think so. Okay, so now if I go file name like that, and we'll run that section, and we have file name scroll underscore hyphenated lists .png. There is a kind of logic for choosing to use an underscore there and a hyphen there, but I'm not going to bore you with that right now. But that was the naming scheme that I came up with. And what that means is that now when the file gets written, it's going to get written with an informative part, the bit that says, hey, this is a scroll image, but also just some machine readable stuff, some content there that is useful for specifying the relationship between this particular file and the script that generated it. And in artwork, well, maybe I don't care about it so much, but when it comes to doing experiments and things like that, you do care about things like that a lot. So there was a reason for that excursion. Okay, so we get to that point and we go. I think Control Shift S and everything runs. Okay, and so now we've created the scroll file with an appropriate name. And the good thing about that is that if I kind of go, oh well, I'm a bit bored, I want to, let's say, have it slip a lot further. Let's see what this looks like. So we can save that. So I source that. It's created a different file. It's automatically created a new file because I gave it a new parameter setting. That can be super helpful. I have no idea what this is going to look like. There you go. Okay, that was kind of cool. That was interesting, I guess. And that way you won't overwrite your old artwork by mistake. Like if you found a set of parameters that you really liked, you could always reconstruct it from the file name. I mean, it's a bit tricky to do, but you absolutely could. You could say, okay, well, it must be 2 for the first parameter, 500 for the second parameter, 80 for the third, and so on. But also, anytime you change the parameters, you get a new file. And that can be a really helpful thing. So I'm going to do it that way. I'll just delete the original one. And that's more or less it for this section. There is going to be more about art, but and um, there is going to be more programming where I kind of consolidate on the techniques. There'll be another one where I go back to you know, the slides, right, with things like this that actually um, tries to flesh out the theory or give you a bit more um, of an explanation behind all the different concepts that I've illustrated in the process. But that's basically it. And so at this point, like, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I needed to do. The main thing from this would just be you now have a generative art system. You can play around with it to your heart's content. Um, if you want to you know, things to think of, things to think about if you want to try and modify this and see what you've learned, is, well, what would happen if I wanted to make this with a different, let's say I want different parameters. Like at the moment, the max value of the bounding of the original data set, you know, like it's 0 to 2, 0 to 2 for both x and y, but that could be a parameter if you wanted it to be, like, and so that could be one of the things that could be varied in argh. Or maybe a more interesting thing is you could what's the thing I'm looking for, have the palette be one of those things. So for example, what if I wanted the, I don't know, La Jolla palette. So you can just change this here, and if I've saved it and then gone, I don't know, I can't remember which one I just edited. It wasn't that one. Sorry. Let's go and have a look at this one. Okay, so here we go. The La Jolla palette has a bit more color to it, right? But I just overwrote my file, so because the palette is something I've fixed here. So in the, again, I should, you know, tidy myself up afterwards and kind of go. But you could say that maybe this should be given a name, right? So I could instead say so we'll say there, and then for now I'm just going to pop in a little variable here called palette name is going to be Grace. Typical. It's going to be Gray C, and that's going to give us the original image again. Let's just check. Yes, it is. Okay, that's great. But you could choose to make that a free parameter of your art system as well. So the goal now, before coming back to the next section, which is just going to be a little bit more dull than the others, is feel free to play around with this. Try out other possibilities. See if you can make your own cool artwork that you like. This one has rambled on a little longer than I was hoping it would, so I'm going to stop here and let you all go. Alright, thank you for listening.